Welcome back to the AIR Prep series. In our last session, we covered the AIR certification itself, what it is, who it's designed for, and how to go about registering. If you haven't watched that one yet, I'd suggest starting there, because understanding why this certification exists and what it's trying to validate will give you a lot more context for everything we're about to cover. Now, knowing that you want the certification is one thing. Knowing exactly what stands between you and it is another. And that's what this session is all about, the exam itself. The structure, the domains, the scoring, and what exam day actually feels like. Here's why this matters. I've seen candidates who knew the material well but underperformed simply because they walked in without a clear picture of what they were facing. They were surprised by the scenario-heavy format. They mismanaged their time. They didn't know how scoring worked and made poor decisions about guessing. All of that is avoidable. And that's exactly what this session is designed to help you with. Think of this as your strategic briefing before we get into the content. By the end, you'll have a clear map of the exam, how it's structured, what each domain covers, how to approach the questions, and what to expect on the day itself. That clarity is the foundation everything else builds on. Let's get into it. So let's start with the basics. The AAIR exam consists of 90 multiple choice questions. And right away, I want you to notice something important. 90 questions is not a small exam. It's substantial. It requires both breadth of knowledge across multiple domains and the stamina to stay focused and sharp throughout. The exam covers 3 core domains which together map the end-to-end landscape of AI risk, from understanding how AI systems work, to identifying and assessing AI-specific risks, to governing and managing those risks within an organizational context. We'll get into the specifics of each domain in just a moment. Now here's something that matters a lot for how you prepare. This is not a purely theoretical exam. Yes, there are conceptual questions, definitions, frameworks, principles. But a significant portion of the exam is scenario-based. You'll be presented with a situation, a company deploying an AI model, an audit finding an unexplained model decision, a board asking for risk reporting on an AI initiative, and you'll need to apply your knowledge to determine the best course of action. That distinction is critical. Memorizing definitions will only take you so far. What the exam is really testing is whether you can think like a risk professional operating in an AI environment. I always tell candidates, don't just study what things are, study what you would do and why. That applied mindset is what separates passing candidates from struggling ones. Let's look at the 3 domains in a bit more detail, because understanding what each domain covers will directly shape your study strategy. Domain 1 is AI fundamentals and concepts. This is your foundation. It covers what AI and machine learning actually are, how different types of AI systems work, the AI development lifecycle, and key terminology. Think of this as the domain that ensures you can speak the language, that when a data scientist or an AI vendor says model drift or training data or neural network, you know exactly what they mean and what the risk implications are. We'll be going deep on this domain in our very next session. Domain 2 is risk identification and assessment. This is where the risk management expertise comes in. How do you identify AI-specific risks? How do you assess their likelihood and impact? How do you evaluate bias, fairness, explainability gaps, and data quality issues as risk factors? This domain sits at the heart of what AAIR is about. It's where your existing risk management knowledge meets the new world of AI. Domain 3 is governance and risk management. This covers the frameworks, controls, policies, and oversight mechanisms that organizations need to govern AI responsibly. Think regulatory requirements like the EU AI Act, internal governance structures, audit approaches for AI systems, and how to embed AI risk management into enterprise risk frameworks. Here's my practical advice. Don't treat these domains as separate silos. The exam will test your ability to connect them. A scenario question might ask you to assess a governance gap that has its roots in a data risk, which spans all 3 domains simultaneously. Study them individually, but practice integrating them. Now let's talk about the question format, because knowing how questions are structured is just as important as knowing the content. All 90 questions are multiple choice with a single best answer. And I want to emphasize that phrase, single best answer. Not the only correct answer, not a perfect answer. The best answer among the options given. This is a nuance that trips up a lot of candidates. You might look at two options and think both are partially right, and you'd be correct. Your job is to identify which one is more complete, more aligned with established risk management principles, or more appropriate given the specific scenario. Scenario-based questions are a significant part of the exam. These questions describe a situation, often a realistic workplace context, and ask you what a risk professional should do, or what the most significant risk is, or what the first step in a process should be. These questions reward applied thinking over rote memorization. Let me give you a sense of what I mean. A purely theoretical question might ask, what is model drift? A scenario question might say, a financial institution deployed a credit scoring model 18 months ago. Performance metrics have remained stable, but approval rates for certain customer segments have changed significantly. What should the risk team investigate first? That's a very different kind of thinking, and it's much closer to what you'll actually do on the job. Practice with scenario-based questions as much as you can before exam day. It makes a measurable difference. Let's demystify the scoring, because I find that a lot of candidates have anxiety about this, often because they don't fully understand how it works. The AAIR exam uses a scaled scoring approach. This means your raw score, the number of questions you answer correctly, is converted to a scaled score that accounts for variations in question difficulty across different exam versions. So if your version of the exam happened to have slightly harder questions than another version, the scaling adjusts for that. It's a fair system designed to ensure consistency across all candidates. There is a predefined passing threshold. ISACA has not publicly specified the exact number, but the scaled scoring approach means the passing mark is determined relative to the difficulty of the questions, not an absolute number of correct answers. Your goal is simply to demonstrate sufficient mastery across all three domains. Here's a piece of good news. There is no negative marking. You will not be penalized for wrong answers. This has a very practical implication for your exam strategy. Never leave a question blank. If you're running out of time or genuinely unsure, make your best educated guess. A blank answer is guaranteed zero. An educated guess gives you a chance. All questions carry equal weight, so there's no point spending disproportionate time on any single question. Time management is about distributing your effort evenly across the exam, not trying to maximize points on individual questions you find interesting or challenging. Let's talk about the logistics of the exam itself. Duration, format, and your options for how and where you take it. The exam has a fixed time limit. I'd encourage you to check the ISACA website for the most current specifications, as these can be updated. What I want you to focus on for now is the implication. 90 questions in a fixed window means you have a limited amount of time per question. Going in without a time management strategy is one of the most common reasons candidates run out of time and rush through the final questions. A simple rule of thumb: know roughly how long you can spend per question given the total time, and check your pace at the halfway mark. If you're significantly behind, start moving faster. If you're significantly ahead, use the buffer to review flagged questions. The exam is computer-based. You'll be navigating through questions on screen, and a timer will be visible throughout. You cannot pause the exam once it begins, so make sure you've taken care of everything: bathroom break, water, a comfortable setup before you start. You have two options for where you sit the exam: at an approved test center or remotely from your own location. Remote proctoring has become increasingly common and is a genuinely viable option, but it comes with its own requirements: a stable internet connection, a quiet private space, and a webcam. If you choose remote, do a full technical check the day before. The last thing you want on exam day is a technical issue eating into your time. Let's walk through exam day itself, because knowing what to expect removes a lot of unnecessary stress. And stress is one of the biggest performance inhibitors in any high stakes exam. Whether you're at a test center or taking the exam remotely, identity verification is required. Have your government issued ID ready. For remote exams, you'll typically need to show your ID to the camera as part of the check-in process. This is non-negotiable, so don't show up unprepared. The testing environment is secure and proctored. For test centers, you'll be in a supervised room with other candidates. Personal items are typically not allowed at your desk. No phones, no notes, no reference materials. For remote exams, a proctor monitors you via webcam and screen share throughout the duration. You'll likely be asked to show your workspace on camera before the exam begins. Here's something I tell every candidate: read the exam instructions carefully before you start. I know that sounds obvious, but under the pressure of exam day, people rush through the instructions and miss important details about how to flag questions for review, how to navigate between questions, or what to do if you experience a technical issue. And perhaps the most important piece of advice for exam day: manage your nervous energy. It's natural to feel anxious, but anxiety that isn't managed will cost you marks. Take a breath before you start. Read each question fully before looking at the answer options. Trust your preparation. You've done the work. Now let yourself demonstrate. Let's talk strategy, because how you approach the exam is almost as important as what you know going into it. Start with this: read every question fully before you look at the answer options. This sounds simple, but scenario questions in particular can be misread when you're rushing. The difference between what should the risk manager do first and what is the most significant risk is substantial, and getting it wrong because you skimmed the question is a costly mistake. Use the elimination method. In a 4-option multiple choice exam, you often won't be immediately sure of the right answer, but you can frequently identify 1 or 2 options that are clearly wrong. Eliminate those first. Now you're choosing between 2 options rather than 4, which significantly improves your odds even if you're unsure. Manage your time actively. Don't let one difficult question absorb 5 minutes while 20 other questions wait. Flag it, move on, come back if time permits. The questions you can answer confidently in 30 seconds are worth exactly the same as the ones that take you 3 minutes of deliberation. Don't overthink. ISACA exams are designed around established professional principles. When in doubt, ask yourself, what would a reasonable, experienced risk professional do in this situation? What does good governance look like here? The answer that aligns with sound, ethical, principle-based risk management is almost always the right one. Resist the urge to look for hidden complexity where there isn't any. Sometimes, the straightforward answer really is the right answer. I've spoken with a lot of ISACA exam candidates over the years, and the same mistakes come up again and again. Let me save you from making them. The first is rushing. Candidates who finish early and don't use remaining time for review are leaving marks on the table. Speed is not a virtue in a knowledge exam. Accuracy is. If you finish with time remaining, go back to your flagged questions. Review answers you felt uncertain about. A second read of a scenario question often reveals something you missed the first time. The second is ignoring scenario details. Scenario questions are built around specific context: the industry, the stage of AI deployment, the role of the person in the scenario, the nature of the risk. These details are not decorative. They're there to help you identify the most appropriate answer. Candidates who read scenarios too quickly and miss a key detail often pick an answer that would be correct in a different context but is wrong for the one described. The third is misinterpreting key terms. AI risk has a specific vocabulary: model drift, algorithmic bias, explainability, data lineage. If you're fuzzy on what these terms mean in a precise sense, you'll struggle with questions that hinge on them. Spend time during your preparation not just knowing terms, but understanding exactly what they mean in practice. And finally, insufficient practice with scenario questions. The AAIR exam is not a vocabulary test, it's an applied knowledge test. Candidates who only study theory and never practice scenario based questions are genuinely underprepared for the format they'll encounter. Build scenario practice into your study plan from day one. The more you practice, the more natural the applied thinking becomes. Let's close with the things I want you to walk away from this session remembering. First, know your exam blueprint. 90 questions across 3 domains: theory and scenarios, single best answer, no negative marking. Understanding this structure shapes how you study and how you approach the exam on the day. Second, give equal attention to all 3 domains. I see candidates overinvest in domain 1 because it feels foundational and underprepare for domain 3 because governance feels less tangible. But the exam tests all 3 domains, and a weak domain will pull your overall score down. Build a balanced study plan. Third, scenario practice is non-negotiable. Find practice questions, work through case studies. Ask yourself, given this situation, what does good AI risk management look like? The more you practice applied thinking, the more comfortable you'll be when you encounter it in the actual exam. Fourth, time management is a skill you need to practice, not just a principle you need to understand. Know your pace going in. Check your progress at the halfway point. Don't let any single question derail your rhythm. And fifth, stay calm. You're here because you're a risk professional who recognizes that AI is reshaping the risk landscape, and you want to be equipped to navigate it. That seriousness of purpose is an asset. Trust your preparation, manage your time, read carefully, and apply what you know. In our next session, we'll get into the content itself, starting with AI fundamentals. See you there.